on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to talk to you about a movie that I used to like quite a bit. Dracula AD 1972. This is a 4-pack of Hammer Dracula movies. We have Horror of Dracula, which I think is the first Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing Dracula movie. We have Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, and Taste the Blood of Dracula. And then also Dracula 1972, which a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I watched all 4 of these, and this one was my favorite of the bunch. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of the 1970s, the early 70s. Occultism was kind of big, so it makes sense to bring Dracula into the present day. And at this time, I don't think this had ever been done in a Dracula movie. There was a movie that came out a couple of years earlier with a very similar type of vampire. I think his name was like Count Yorgo or something like that, and it was set in the present day. And I think that is what kind of kicked some people into high gear at Hammer, and they said, why don't we do that with Dracula? And I like the concept. Unfortunately, this movie doesn't do a whole lot with the concept. We start off in 1872. We see Lawrence Van Helsing. I have no idea who Lawrence is. His name is Abraham Van Helsing, or it's supposed to be. He is fighting Dracula, and then basically they both end up killing each other. And then some guy shows up, and he takes some of Dracula's ashes, and then we cut forward 100 years into the future, and I really like the way it does it. It shows Lawrence Van Helsing's gravestone, and then it cuts up and an airplane flies by, and well, it cuts up to the sky and it shows the word Dracula on the screen, and then the airplane flies by, and then it says 1972, which would be really cool if you had somehow like blindfolded yourself and walked into the theater and had no idea what you were watching. But I'm assuming everybody who went to the theater knew what the movie's title was. But anyway, basically you have Lawrence Van Helsing's grandson, also played by Peter Cushing. He is Lorimer Van Helsing, and then his granddaughter is Jessica Van Helsing. I guess he is raising her. We don't really find out what happened to her parents, and she's got some friends. They're all groovy. They're going to wild and crazy parties, man. We spend a lot of time with all these crazy kids at this party. There's some guy, he lives with his parents, and they're like, you know, why did you have to invite all these wacky people to this house? We said you could invite a few friends. And he's like, well, I never have seen any of them before. I only invited this band, the Stone Garden. And there's like 2 musical numbers from the Stone Garden, which is a band I had never heard of before. This isn't like the movie Blackula that introduced... what was the band that did Don't Rock the Boat? I'm 99% sure that band debuted in Blackula. This isn't like that, where it's like, oh, hey, this really popular band that did this really popular song, they got their start in this horror movie from the 70s. It's not like that. I'm going to guess even people from the 70s don't know who the Stone Garden is. But this movie really wants to throw this band out there, like, hey, guys, these guys are pretty cool, right? They're going to do a couple of songs, and you're going to like it. And it just slows the movie down, and we haven't even started the movie yet. But all these guys, they're hanging out at the party, and then the people who own the house, they call the cops. And then there's like this really lengthy running joke of how long is it going to take for the cops to get here? Well, it's Friday night, so it might take them a little longer. And some people were saying like 8 minutes, and some people were saying 5. And they're all they're just going to stay there until the cops get there. Then they all leave, and there's this one guy who's got this really creepy face. He picks up this priceless statue, what I'm assuming is a priceless statue, and he's acting like, ooh, I'm going to drop it, I'm going to drop it. And the people who own the house, they're like, you know, oh no, don't. And then he puts it on the table, and as he's leaving, he knocks it over. And then they're all meeting at a tavern somewhere, and then he says, hey, why don't we have a black mass where we try to summon the devil? And everyone else is like, oh, that sounds groovy, mate, so we're going to do it. And then they all show up, and I should point out, out of all of these actors, with the exception of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, the only actress here that I actually recognize is some Caroline Munro. I think it's Caroline. She was in a couple of movies featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000. She was the main character in Star Crash, and she was also in At the Earth's Core, which I think At the Earth's Core might have been around the time that this came out. Star Crash came out after Star Wars, but this was, I guess, earlier earlier in her career, and I was looking her up. She was also in a movie called Captain Kronos Vampire Slayer, which looks to be pirates fighting vampires, so that has to be interesting. I haven't seen it, but I am interested in it. But anyway, these guys, they all go to a cemetery, and this guy, I should point out, this guy who says, why don't we have a black mask where we are going to try and summon a demon, he is the same actor who showed up and gathered some of Dracula's ashes in 1872. So he is a descendant of that guy. And then he says, Jessica Van Helsing, why don't you come up here and we will summon this demon together. You will lay on this altar and I will say some words and I'm holding a chalice and all this is perfectly normal. And then Caroline Munro is like, no, I want to do it. Let me do it. And then he pours the ashes in the goblet and then he slits his wrist and pours the blood into the chalice and then he spills it all over her. And suddenly, when he does that, everyone just starts screaming and they're all running out like, we gotta get out of here. And it's gross. If somebody spilled their blood on me, I would be freaking out, but I don't know why her friends are running around screaming like, let's get out of here. And so she just like falls on the floor and is a big mess, physically and also emotionally. And this is able to summon Dracula back to life. And then he comes in and he feeds on Stella Starcrash. And then we eventually lead into the others who didn't die. They're all like, that was really weird, and we don't really like or trust this Johnny Alucard guy. And by the way, every time I see this, I always laugh whenever a character's name is Alucard. Most of the time, it's Dracula using a pseudonym, although sometimes it's like a descendant of Dracula. Every time I see it, it's like, this is a good pseudonym, I'll just use my name, but backwards. And then when somebody finds it out, it's like, dun dun dun! Like at one point, Peter Cushing writes out the word Alucard, and then he's like drawing lines and slowly writing out Dracula, and it's really silly. I feel like, even though, like, if somebody came up to me and their last name was, I don't know, Johnson, and then they said that their last name was, I'm not going to try to figure out what that would be, but Johnson spelled backwards, I wouldn't immediately look in my mind and think, that's Johnson spelled backwards. But at the same time, maybe it's because I've seen the Alucard thing at least thrice. Maybe it's because of that, but whenever I see that, I immediately think, how are these guys not picking up on that? But anyway, they're all like, yeah, that was really weird what happened last night. And then Johnny Alucard comes in and says, oh, don't worry, she's still alive. And then some of them are like, I don't know, but whatever. And then he wants to, he has a ticket for something to give to Jessica. And as you'll probably notice from hearing me talk about the plot synopsis, he is trying to lure Jessica so that she can be killed by Count Dracula. He wants to end the Van Helsing line, and he wants to turn and or feed on Jessica Van Helsing. And the rest of the movie is just kind of slow. Eventually, the cops find Caroline Munro's body in what is quite possibly the funniest scene in a movie that I've seen in a very long time, because Johnny Alucard is talking to his friends, and they're all, once he's kind of convinced them that everything that happened last night was all just smoke and mirrors, and that there was nothing weird or untoward going on, he says, boy, I can't wait for Caroline to hear about this, and then it hard cuts to Caroline's dead body halfway buried in rubble, and then it cuts up to these two kids who are just staring at the dead body, and they're not screaming or anything, and then it cuts right back to Johnny Alucard talking to his friends. Really, really funny. I laughed hard at that. But the rest of the movie is Johnny Alucard trying to bring Jessica to Count Dracula. For some reason, Dracula never leaves this cemetery and halfway torn down church. He just stays there. That is a big thing. At least in the movie Blackula, this guy from like 200 years ago, he is interacting with modern day society, and we get to see him like, oh, a car, how quaint, and he's like at a nightclub and he's enjoying the music, and it doesn't spend a whole lot of time on the man out of time aspect, but it at least shows this guy interacting with the world around him. I feel like they had Christopher Lee for like 3 days of shooting, so they just kept him in this one spot and didn't use him throughout the movie. And apparently Christopher Lee was appalled at the script. I am too, if I'm being honest. I think the first time I saw this years ago, what I really liked about it was the atmosphere. I love seeing all the 1970s stuff. The music is pretty cheesy. At one point, Peter Cushing, when he realizes that his granddaughter has been kidnapped and is about to be turned. He is running through the streets of London, and the music and then him running reminds me of the 1966 Batman movie where they're running through Gotham, and then also Johnny Alucard's ancestor picking up the ashes. That kind of reminded me of Penguin picking up the ashes of the United World Senate, or United World whatever they were called. So yeah, I kept thinking of a more entertaining movie than this one while watching it. Overall, it's fine. If you really like the 1970s aesthetic, you will probably enjoy this movie. But the plot, there's nothing to write home about. The characters are pretty paper thin. There was a sequel, also obviously set in the 70s, and I seem to recall Dracula had more of a presence in that one than he does here. But overall, I didn't like that one as much. That one was called Satanic Rites of Dracula, and Jessica Van Helsing in that was played by Joanna Lumley. But overall, I remember not liking that one as much, and I want to say that was one of the last of the Hammer Dracula movies. So I don't know how many of them there were that had Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. I know there was at least one of the Hammer Dracula movies that it was called like something of Dracula, like House of Dracula or Brides of Dracula or something, and it didn't have Dracula in it. This one might as well not have had him in it. He has about 2 scenes in the movie. Well, 3. There's his death scene at the very beginning, and then he's resurrected, and then we see him later where Johnny Alucard has brought him somebody who's not Jessica, so that's 3, and then there's everything in the climax. So 4 scenes. 4 scenes with Dracula. The movie's not especially long. It's about an hour and a half long, and that's fine. It doesn't need to be 2.5 hours long, especially since there isn't a whole lot of plot here. But I don't know what I would have rather seen them do. At least have Dracula interacting with the 1970s world. If you just turn this movie on halfway into it and you see Dracula come out of his grave and he's talking to Johnny Alucard, you wouldn't necessarily know that this is set in the 70s. Or at any point in the climax where Peter Cushing is fighting Christopher Lee and there's a girl here, her clothes don't especially scream 1970s, you wouldn't know that it is set in the 70s. Take advantage of the time period and the setting. I feel like this movie would have been significantly better if they had done that. So that is everything that I have to say about Dracula 1972 AD. I hope you guys liked this video, and I will talk to you guys in the future with some more videos. In the meantime, have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.